Hey everybody, welcome to Monster Monday. I'm your host, DM Gallibond, and tonight on Monster Monday, we are going to be taking a look at the Troglodyte. Alright, as your party is entering the caverns, you first notice corpses of small creatures, and then corpses of kobolds. Soon, your nostrils fill with an awful stench. Woo! That's more than a smell of death you're smelling there. Woo-wee! My friends, this may be when you know that you have stumbled into a den of troglodytes. Alright, everybody, like I said, it's September 28th, 2020, and tonight we're going to be looking not only at the armored troglodyte, which is a special kind of troglodyte that was created for Dungeon of the Mad Mage. No, it's not really special. It's just wearing armor. And then we're also going to look at other troglodytes through the history of D&D. And I am your host, DM Gallibond. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek at these guys to get started. So a troglodyte is a bipedal humanoid monster, and it is classified as a humanoid. So it's got all of those kinds of humanoid features. They're very primitive, and they live both in surface caves as well as in the upper layer of the Underdark. They're simplistic, and their primary motivation is the drive to hunt for food. They're not particularly smart or ambitious, but they have an animal predators type of clever intelligence. And they also take a perverse delight in hunting and killing sentient creatures, especially other humanoids. Uh, because of their foul environments in which they live. Now, this is 5th edition troglodytes here. Because of the foul environments in which they live, they can often be smelled long before they are detected. Um, they're perhaps the most loathsome of all humanoids, and they eat anything they can stomach, and they dwell in filth. The walls of their cavern homes are smeared with grime, oily secretions, and the debris of their feasting. Uh, so now the difference between the garden variety troglodyte in 5e and the armored troglodyte that was next in the alphabetical list of monsters as we're going through is that the armored troglodyte from Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage simply wears breastplate. All other statistics, he's just the same as any other troglodyte. He just has armor on. So I thought, it wouldn't be very much fun to talk about that. We have to go back and we have to talk about all troglodytes. So let's take a look at their lore. They're very simple-minded. They have a simple communal culture devoted almost entirely to procuring food. Wow, language. Use it sometime. Too simple to plan more than a few days into the future. Troglodytes rely on constant raids and hunting to survive. And like I said, they take sadistic pleasure in hunting other intelligent creatures weaker than themselves, and they show no mercy to those they capture and drag back to their lairs to be devoured. Largest and toughest trogs lead the hunt and become the leaders of their tribes. However, a leader shows any weakness or hesitation, other troglodytes attack and eat it in a frenzy. They make little and build less, scavenging their possessions from their prey. They understand the value of metal weapons and armor and fight among one another for the right to have such items. And an entire tribe might be torn apart fighting for a rusty longsword. Wow. Yeah, this is the kind of they are vicious, mean, and horrible and disgusting. And for a first level party, these guys are terrifying. Okay, so we said before they're humanoids, and humanoids include all of the peoples of the D&D world. Most of them have they almost all have language, or they all have language, and they have some kind of culture. Uh, and many humanoids can learn spellcasting. Now, looking at the lore of 5th edition troglodytes, you would be skeptical whether they could. However, as we will see, that's not always been the case. Uh, Most common humanoid races are the ones suitable for PCs, and almost as numerous but far more savage and brutal, uniformly evil, are the monstrous humanoids, as they are sometimes called, and obviously troglodytes would fall into that category. Now, of course, in every edition of D&D, I think eventually they put out the supplements where um, humanoids can be playable character races, and as we'll see, some of the various editions of D&D actually have all that stuff baked into the monster manual. All right. Speaking of the various editions of D&D, uh, they have appeared in every edition since the original basic D&D came out. So we are going to go ahead and switch gears over here and take a look at at first the armored troglodyte, and then we will go through troglodytes in the throughout the editions. So an armored troglodyte has armor class 14 because of breastplate, just 13 hit points. They are a CR 1/4 creature, so you know, they're practically the one of the weakest things that you can find. Now they do have an interesting natural defense. In the chameleon skin, they have advantage on dexterity checks made to hide because their skin can change color, kind of like some lizards. And they have a stench. So any creature other than a trog that starts its turn within 5 feet of the troglodyte must succeed on a DC 12 con save or be poisoned until the start of the creature's next turn. Um, and on a successful save, creature is immune to the stench of all troglodytes for 1 hour. So now poison, it means they just have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. So in 5th edition, that poison condition, it makes it harder to hit them. Now for a low level creature, they do get multi attack, so they can make either 2 attacks with a long sword or 3 attacks with a bite and 2 claws. All of those attacks are +4 to hit, and they range from 1d10 +1 with the longsword down to 1d4 +2. Or I'm sorry, 1d10 +2 for the longsword, and 1d4 +2 for their claws or their bite. Uh, so yeah, they're very fierce as low-level monsters, and that makes them a little bit of a challenge for a first level party if you throw a group of these at them. So let's go back and take a look at the rules way back in the beginning of the game. The basic D&D, original D&D. Troglodytes had armor class 5. They were 2-hit die monsters. Attack with 2 claws and a bite, 1d4, 1d4. They're chaotic. And now notice here it says a troglodyte is an intelligent humanoid reptile. It has short tail, long legs, and a spiny comb on its head and arms. They walk upright and use their hands as well as humans, and they hate most other creatures. Um, they have that chameleon-like ability, and they use it to hide, with gaining surprise on 1 through 4 and a 1d6. Troglodyte secretes an oil that produces a stench, nauseating humans and demi-humans. Again, a saving throw versus poison. Nauseated characters have -2 penalty on attack rolls while in melee combat. And it says there can be troglodyte spellcasters. Now, there's a whole section of the book just to how to add the spellcaster template to monsters. We're not going to deal with that just now. We're going to look at some other examples through the history of the game. So, troglodytes here, armor class. So this is AD&D, so first edition. Again, 120 feet per round out of combat, or 40 feet per round in combat. Armor class 5, 2 hit dice. They get 3 attacks, claws and a bite. Now here, the claws do 1d3 and the bite does 1d4 plus 1, or by the weapon. They have the revulsion or odor. And now notice how they start talking about when you go into the lair. So for every 10 trogs, there will be 1 leader that has 3 hit dice. And for every 20, there will be an additional 2 leaders with 4 hit dice each. And a 60 or more encounter, there will be a troglodyte chieftain with 6 hit dice and 2 to 8 guards of 3 hit dice each. Typically a large cave. Lair will contain females equal to 100% of the males. Females fight as 1+1 hit dice monsters. Also be hatchlings and eggs. And then it gives a breakdown of what kinds of weapons that they typically have. Javelins are great veined darts that have a +3 chance to hit. When aroused for battle, troglodytes emit a secretion which smells extremely disgusting to humans. And now, here's what it does in AD&D. Humans failing their saving throw versus poison are affected by revulsion so as to lose 1 point of strength per melee round for 1d6 rounds cumulative. So you're down 1 hit. You're down 1 point of strength at the first round. You're down 2 after the second. Down 3 after the third. Down 4 after the fourth. So it gets harder and harder and harder to hit them. And then that loss of strength lasts for 10 melee rounds after it's taken its final effect. And then it talks about they still have the chameleon-like power, so they can change their coloration. So you can see that at one time, the troglodytes, they were a little more nuanced and a little more sophisticated and even a little bit more scary than they are for low-level characters in 5th edition. So now let's go to 2nd edition. And here's our lovely troglodyte here, subterranean and mountain, armor class 5, same movement, same hit dice, number of attacks. Now the claws, instead of 1d3, they're now 1d2. And it's 1d4 plus 1 for the bite, or 2d4 for their weapon. And they're carnivorous, reptilian humanoids that dwell in natural subterranean caverns. Hate man above all other creatures and often launch bloody raids on human communities in search of food and steel. 50% of troglodytes of a troglodyte force uses teeth and claws. Remaining uses weapons, and it gives the breakdown there. They're organized into clan, each clan led by a chieftain. Number of sub-chieftains, rank is loose, and internal squabbles are common. For every 10 tribes, there's a leader with 3 hit dice. For every 20, sub-chieftains with 4 hit dice. Okay, so very similar to how the AD&D version worked. Now let's see. They Okay, so yes, angered and enraged in melee secrete an oil that smells extremely disgusting. Those failing their saving throws are volted to lose 1d6 Okay, just they lose 1d6 points of strength, and the loss remains in effect for 10 rounds. So it sounds like in second edition, it's not that cumulative loss of strength. It's just you roll a d6, and that's how much strength you lose. So you could lose 6 points of strength in the first round of combat, which, yeah, that would make them a little bit more difficult because you wouldn't be hitting them as hard, and you'd have a harder time hitting them, at least with melee weapons. Um, okay, set their lair near human or demi-human settlements, enables them to prey on both settlers and their livestock. Value steel above all else, using it to make javelins and as a form of wealth. On moonless nights, raiding parties of 50 or more venture forth in search of food and steel. And they are strict carnivores. They prefer human flesh over all others, but they won't hesitate to devour practically anything they can catch, including members of other troglodyte clans. Okay. And then in third edition, here's where we start to get some idea about how troglodytes would be as player characters, because third edition did a good job with humanoids of giving you all that information. So you notice they're a little bit tougher. They're 2d8 plus 4 hit points, armor class 15, club or claw or javelin. So they do club and claw and bite, or 2 claws and bite, or javelin for range. They have that stench attack, and they have the chameleon skin. So revolting lizard creatures, as evil as the foulest of demons, warlike and savor the taste of their enemies, especially humanoids. Okay, Troglodyte stands about 5 feet tall and weighs about 150 pounds, and they speak Draconic. Okay, so here we get a little sense of what their language is. So they are, I think, like lizard folk. They speak Draconic as well. So here's the stench. All living creatures within 30 feet of a troglodyte. Okay, all the other editions so far, it's been just 5 feet. Here in third edition, that stench goes out to 30 feet. Must succeed in DC 13 or be sickened for 10 rounds. And sickened had a mechanical meaning, just like poison does in 5th edition. Save DC is Constitution based, and if they save, they cannot be affected by the same troglodyte stench for 24 hours. Okay, so that makes you immune to that individual stench, but you still have to roll individually for every troglodyte you encounter. So that's a little bit different from 5th edition, where you're only immune for an hour, but you're immune to all troglodyte stench. And then skin of Troglodyte changes color, and it gives you a +4 racial bonus on hide checks. And in rocky or underground settings, the bonus improves to +8. So they're ruled by the largest and fiercest, with sub-chieftains who have distinguished themselves in battle. And then they prize steel above all else. And now here's a little bit about their culture. Troglodytes revere Leagzet, a vile deity who resembles a cross between a toad and a lizard. Its favorite weapon is a javelin, so troglodyte clerics can choose any 2 of the following domains: chaos, death, destruction, and evil. And speaking of clerics, hey, troglodyte characters. So in this edition, they went ahead and put in the monster manual in the humanoids, if you want to make a PC that's a troglodyte, this is what happens. And of course, it's always subject to the DM allowing you to play a troglodyte. So they're -2 dex, +4 con, -2 intelligence, medium size. Troglodyte's base land speed is 30 feet, dark vision out to 90 feet. So a little bit better than a lot of races, which are 60 feet. Begins with 2 levels of humanoid, which provide 2d8 hit dice, base attack bonus of +1, and base saving throw bonuses of fortitude +3, reflex and will flat. Troglodyte's humanoid levels give it skill points equal to 5 times 2 plus their intelligence modifier, minimum of 1. Class skills are hide and listen, have a +4 racial bonus on hide. Okay, talk about that. Humanoid levels give it 1 feat. Troglodyte receives multi-attack as a bonus feat. So +6 natural armor bonus, natural weapons 2 claws and bite, special attacks, stench. Now, of course, the problem is if you're an adventurer, if you're a PC as a troglodyte, especially in this edition, every time you go into battle, you can use that stench, but it affects all creatures. So it's going to affect the first time you get into a battle every day. It's going to affect all your party members, unless they can somehow think up of some way of mitigating that for them. But if they mitigate that for them, then you lose that bonus against your enemies. All right. Favorite class is cleric and level adjustment +2. Okay. So, yeah. So that's a very interesting thing. You now see how from 5th edition they're nothing but brutish and dumb and stupid and only think about gathering food. 3rd edition, wow, most often they are drawn to the cleric class when you roll up a troglodyte PC. Interesting. Well, now 4th edition. Of course, we know 4th edition is a little bit different. And there's a whole group of different kinds of troglodytes in 4th edition. So the subterranean savages descended from primitive reptiles. They launch raids against surface world when food in the Underdark is scarce. They secrete a foul musk, and in close quarters, a spell can be overpowering. So a troglodyte warrior is a level 12 minion. Okay, now, I mentioned this in another Monster Monday not long ago. Minions come at every level in 4th edition. They hit pretty hard, so now they have a +15 on their attacks, uh, and they just deal a flat 7 damage every time they hit. But they only have 1 hit point. And the idea behind minions is in 4th edition, you're supposed to throw a whole bunch of minions out kind of as the trash at the beginning of an encounter and force the party members to either spend time going around and hitting every single minion and getting it down, or waste kind of area of effect spell resources to get rid of a lot of minions, and then soften up the party a little bit for the main fight that is to come. Some people loved 4th edition. Other people hated it because it made you feel like you were playing a video game with dice. Because that's exactly the kind of tactic you would expect to find, like when you walk into a cavern in World of Warcraft. Okay, well, there's this thing you came here to kill, but there's all these other things over there that are going to attack you before you can get to the thing that you came to kill. So Troglodyte Warrior Tactics. Troglodyte Warrior pounds enemies as a club and relies on hard stench for added protection. So now this is a level 6 soldier. And the stench is common to all of these. Aura 1, so it's 1 square around them. And living enemies in the aura take a -2 penalty to attack rolls. Now, it's interesting they say that here, enemies, that means only people that are fighting you. So if for some reason if the party has an ally that's a troglodyte, their stench will not affect them, even if they're standing shoulder to shoulder. So they have 74 hit points, armor class 22. They attack with the +12 with their great club, +10 with their claw, and then minor action for a bite. And then And until the end of the Troglodyte Mauler's next turn, healing on the target restores only half the normal amount. So the bite has some kind of effect that dampens healing. So Troglodyte Mauler bludgeons foes to death with its stone great club and tries to flank enemies so it can make biting attacks. The Impaler is a level 7 artillery, 69 hit points, AC 22, plus 11 spear, and the claw plus 9, and javelin, range of 10 or 20, so that's 10 squares, which is 50 feet, or 20 or 100 feet long range. And then there's an impaling shot, which is a recharging ability. And then they stay on the fringe of the battle and hurls javelins. And then finally you have the Troglodyte Curse Chanter, a level 8 controller, so that's a leader type. And has a quarterstaff, but it uses spell-like abilities. So it has a Poison Ray, Cavern Curse, so range 5, and the target takes ongoing 5 necrotic damage and is slowed. Save will end both. Tunnel Grace. All allies in the burst gain plus 5 speed until the end of the Troglodyte Shaman's next turn. And then Chant of Renewal. Bloodied allies in the burst regain 15 hit points. So then Troglodyte Lore. They're stocky, foul-tumbled reptilian humanoids known for their powerful stench, dwell in subterranean warrens, gathering tribes no more than 30 adults. Troglodytes lay their eggs in dank caverns. Hundreds of eggs laid, only a few dozen hatch and survive to adulthood. Hatchling reaches adulthood in 2 years. Minimal culture and technology. They do not take slaves. Captives are devoured swiftly or turned into sacrifices. And they worship a variety of loathsome deities, particularly Torog, the king that crawls. Strive to earn divine favor by torturing creatures into terrible rites lasting for hours. Troglodytes especially like to sacrifice intelligent creatures and brave enemies, sometimes raid surface settlements for sacrificial victims. And then in 4th edition, they gave you kind of hints on how to build an encounter group with Troglodytes. And then sort of some notes on how you'd find it. So, not unusual for tribe of Troglodytes to serve a dragon, naga, drow priest, or other powerful creature. And then here's a few different examples of the kinds of Troglodytes that there are in 4th edition. And now again, of course, we get to 5th edition. And they're just kind of wimpy little monsters in 5th edition. They have an armor class of 11, and that's really the only difference between the normal Troglodyte and the armored Troglodyte, which has the armor class of 14. So natural armor is 11, and the breastplate gives them 14. All right. So now let's go back and take a look at the rest of what we are going to do. Okay, taking a cue from 4th edition and the way they kind of build encounter groups, one of the changes I've made with Monster Monday in the last month or so is looking at, okay, so if you come across this monster, who is it a challenge for? Where would you use it in terms of the level of your party? What would make a good use for that? So you can find them in the upper Underdark or kind of in surface caves, mountains, and you can use 5 Troglodytes in encounters with a party of 5 PCs by level. And just I always kind of think of a party of 5 PCs just because that's a good average number. I know some parties are a little smaller, some are a little bit larger. So 5 Troglodytes by themselves would be a hard borderline deadly. It's actually right on the button with where deadly starts. for a first level party. 5 troglodytes together is the maximum or the bare minimum that you can fight that would be considered a deadly party. Now, as a DM, I usually find that what it's kind of like going it's kind of like going to um, Buffalo Wild Wings and asking for the hot sauce. Um, the hot sauce is kind of, it's kind of got some tang in it, but it's not really all that hot. Um, and if you really want something that's kind of spicy, you kind of have to take that, what they consider like the nuclear sauce, and ask them to do half nuclear sauce and half hot sauce, so that it really gives you a little bit more heat, but it keeps some of the flavor of the hot sauce. So that goes to say that when the DM's guide recommends, XP values for what they consider um, a deadly fight for your PCs. I find that with most PCs or with most players, what they consider deadly, okay. I mean, it it might make them use a healing potion or two after the fight, or recover some hit dice after the fight, but it's not really going to put them in a whole lot of danger. You kind of have to ramp it up and go a little way into the deadly before you can, before you can get to the point where maybe one of the PCs will actually drop to 0 during the fight, and somebody either has to spend a turn getting them back up, or the rest of the party has to finish and then hope they can get to that person in time, or hope that they make their death saves before they expire. So for a first level party, it's just right on the borderline of what the DMG considers deadly. For a second level party, 5 troglodytes would be a medium encounter, and to bring it up to a hard encounter, you could add 1 choker to the party. And then to a third level party, it's considered an easy encounter. And if you want to bring it back up to a hard encounter, you can add a carrion crawler to that. Choker is a CR1 creature. Carrion crawler is a CR2. The way I pick these additional monsters out is I either look for creatures of the same type, or in this case, I look for creatures that also inhabit the Underdark. And so that would be the choker and the crawler. All right, so now where would you use troglodytes in a campaign? The last few weeks we've been looking at really powerful monsters that you're not going to face until you get towards end game of the campaign. This is totally the opposite. 5e troglodytes are disorganized low-level brutes, really not suitable for use as a speed bump to your party after tier 1, and really it's kind of hard to justify using them much after level 2, if I'm honest. So they are a perfect kind of introductory monster on a campaign that centers on a disturbance in the Underdark. So let's say something is causing a lot of chaos in the Underdark and is pushing some of the denizens of the Underdark closer to the surface. Well, as they get closer to the surface, they're going to start running into the troglodytes, and if these more powerful monsters will start pushing the troglodytes out. And so the troglodytes may be more like in surface caverns, and your campaign may begin with a village getting attacked by troglodytes and them putting out a call for heroes. Help! Our village has been attacked, 3 nights in the last 2 weeks by these hideous, stinky monsters. Somebody go kill them. And that's how the party gets brought in. Well, then they deal with the troglodytes, and then maybe somehow they start to find out, well, wait a minute, troglodytes aren't normally here. Why are they here? And start chasing it backwards and peeling back the layers of your campaign until they lead to a deeper explanation of the whole hidden world of the Underdark and whatever sinister force may hold sway there. Maybe somebody like this guy. Maybe he's the reason everybody in the Underdark is going, oh shit, getting the hell out of here. Somebody like that is invited himself to dinner with the Drow priestess, and she's like, not today. All right, so how would you reskin a troglodyte? Normally, I think, okay, take the troglodyte stat block and pull off the troglodyte, skin and put something that looks different there. But with trogs, I want to turn that around a little bit. And I want to go back to kind of the history of troglodytes where they had uh, a more expansive culture, and there were more different kinds of roles within troglodyte society. So imagine that all troglodytes are not uniform CR. So why not take the troglodyte form and attach it to other more difficult monsters that are part of the Underdark ecosystem? I mean, you could maybe take like even like something like a drow spellcaster, and you could put troglodyte skin on it and perhaps pull off one of its powers that is granted by Lolth, and instead put in place that stench power, and maybe pull off one of its cantrips, or maybe like its darkness thing, and instead of darkness it has its chameleon skin so it can hide. So you could really take um, and build troglodytes out into a richer and more expansive culture by simply mining the other monsters of the Underdark and sticking troglodyte skin on them, and using the stat blocks and manipulating a little bit the features and the powers so that it's not easy to tell that, oh hey, wait, that's really a drow spellcaster behind that troglodyte mask, but make it really feel like it's a troglodyte uh, somehow. So that's one of the things that you could do there. All right, now I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and go into the wrap up, and then I will come back and double check to see if there are any questions. All right, this has been Monster Monday. Tonight we've been talking about troglodytes, how they have varied over the editions of D&D. I'm DM Gallibond, and I want to tell you about my live streams that I do, my other live streams. I'm now up to 4 live streams every week. I have 3 games that we play. On Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, it's my Planeswalking Walker of Waterdeep. Uh, that is a fun campaign. Everybody is 8th level now, and they are in Ravnica, and they just found out yesterday they're getting ready to go to a plane called Kamigawa. So if you are a fan of the Magic the Gathering card game, we travel to different planes represented in that game, and they have a story or a mission that they are pursuing there in that is somehow related, not necessarily taken from, but somehow related to the lore of that particular plane. And the monsters they fight are from that card set, and they usually find magic items that are from that card set, and they're spells that probably get used against them that are from that card set and everything like that. All right, so that's on Sunday afternoons at 2. Then on Thursday evenings at 8 p.m., we have the Sword Coast Chronicles. That is sort of a love letter to all of the 5th edition published campaigns. Right now, they are 4th level in that campaign, and uh, they are in the storyline from Horde of the Dragon Queen, which is part of Tyranny of Dragons. They are in El Terrell, and they're getting ready to go uh, meet up or infiltrate the cult wagons and try to figure out where they are going as they're traveling up north. They have an idea from a few allies they've met, Erlanther and Ontharr Froom, that the cult is going to be leaving Baldur's Gate and going north, but they still have to figure out exactly what they're doing. All right, and now a new game that we're starting, that we actually had session 0 for last Saturday night, is the Lost Mine of original D&D. So last year, 2019, I had the idea I was going to start a campaign set in the original basic D&D. So that edition where the Troglodytes first appeared, that's the rule set that I wanted to play a campaign in. Turns out there's a lot of people that they just they're just too lazy to learn a new rule set. They don't want to go back and do that. They like the simplicity of 5e. And so it was a real hard time to recruit and keep players engaged for a campaign, and that eventually kind of fell apart. So what I decided, I said, okay, I punted and I thought about how to approach that again. And what I came up with is taking the Lost Mine of Phandelver and gutting that story, or actually keeping the story, but gutting all the creatures and replacing them with all of their basic D&D edition counterparts. And then creating basic edition D&D pre-generated characters and giving those to the players and saying, all right, we're going to go through and play this storyline. It's a storyline that a lot of you probably already know, and that's fine because the point is not to try to figure out, oh, there's this neat story that nobody knows before. It's to see how differently that storyline plays out when you follow the rules of original D&D. In those rules, they're very unforgiving compared to 5e. And so it kind of can be a little bit fun just to go and get through that. My hope is that if we have a core group that stays with this entire story and really likes it, I can then take them and begin a long-term campaign using the original D&D rules. If not, then that's fine. We can close the book on it and we can move on to something else. So that's going on Saturday nights at I think that's Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern is when that is happening. All right. You can find all of those actual play games right here on this Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Gallibond. You can find the archives of all of my Monster Monday and all of my other shows over on my YouTube channel. You'll also find specific content created for YouTube all 7 days of the week. So slightly shorter videos will pop up Monday through Sunday or Sunday through Saturday on YouTube. And then there's a Patreon if you guys really, really like what we are doing here on the channel. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions on Troglodyte, so thank you guys so much for hanging out tonight. Thank you, future people, for taking the time to watch the show on Troglodytes. And I will close the way I always do by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.